So I'm super excited for today's video because today's video is a response to one of the questions I got in the comments. So here you go. I really do read all the comments and will answer questions as they pop up. So if you want me to make a video about a specific question you have, throw it in the comments and we'll do it. All right, so the question was, what do venture capitalists mean when they say that they invest in technology? They're technology investors. Because look, there are a lot of technology investors out there, myself included, frankly, that invest in things like consumer products. And so where do you draw that line of like, what's technology? Is it just like pure software or hardware or computers, or what constitutes as technology? So I thought maybe it would be helpful first to understand how venture capitalists make money. Now, in venture capital, your job is to invest in the handful of deals that are going to become the next big thing, if you will, right? The next Uber, the next Google, the next Facebook, the next Amazon. Like, that's your job. You need to find like the next big mover and shaker within an industry that is going to like disrupt and define that industry for generations. And that can be really challenging. And the reality is the likelihood that any business is going to achieve that kind of outcome is really low. And so what you have in the venture industry then is this power law distribution where a handful of deals generate the vast majority of returns and all the rest of the deals basically either break even or lose money. So it's not like a normal distribution. It's very, very concentrated on one side, and then has a long tail on the other. So what does this mean in terms of how VCs make money? Well, they're looking for companies that can grow and get really, really big, right? So what does that mean in terms of the types of companies they look for? Well, they're looking for companies that are scalable. They're looking for companies that have defensibility of their business, right? That it's really hard for somebody else to copy exactly what they do. They're looking for companies that can grow very quickly. They're looking for companies that operate within huge markets, and so that the company can get really, really big if they're ultimately successful. They're looking for great management teams that know how to execute and that are willing to look at markets in a way that's different than anybody else, or they're able to look at markets in a way that's different than anybody else. So if those are the main criteria that most venture capitalists look for, it's not so much that it has anything to do with technology. It's more just that technology tends to check a lot of those boxes, right? The beauty, for example, of software is that it scales so well, right? If I want to build a company that sells markers, for example, well, then I got to build a factory, and every time I sell a product, I got to build a marker and I got to ship it off to a customer. But if I build software, I just build it once, and every time I sell it, I don't have to build another thing of software. I just say, yes, you may use a copy of the code that I wrote effectively, right? And so it scales super, super well. And because it can scale really fast, you can get into situations where like you can achieve market dominance really quickly, where like everybody uses Microsoft because everybody uses Microsoft, right? They have the brand, they have the network effects, they have the fact that there are high switching costs. Like if everybody is trained and learns how to use Microsoft products, it's really hard for a new incumbent to come in with a brand new product because people have to relearn it. They don't really want to learn it. So they just stick with what they know, right? So that has high switching costs. The other thing is that oftentimes technology requires that you have people that are really smart because technology is hard to build. And so oftentimes you get really bright entrepreneurs that are doing really interesting things, and oftentimes willing to, and able to look at industries and say, how can I bring some innovation? How can I leverage technology to do this job better? And so that plays really well into, great venture capital deals. The other thing is like technology is broadly applicable to a lot of different markets. Mark Andreessen, for example, is famous for saying software is eating the world. And what he means by that is like software is going to touch every part of your life. And if you're honest with yourself, like you're seeing that more and more and more. How many devices now are smart, right? Like my garage door opener is smart. My lights are smart. My TV is smart. I was just meeting with a company that's making a smart battery, right? There's like all kinds of things that are becoming more and more intelligent and connected and interconnected with each other, right? So because of that, like you have these huge markets that have the potential of being disrupted, right? Like it used to be like you'd buy a car and it had a gas engine and wasn't connected to the internet, and now it feels silly if your car doesn't connect to the internet, right? So automobile industry, huge opportunities for tech all over the place in the auto sphere, right? If you think about logistics, like we've invested in a bunch of logistics companies. One of my favorite deals is Flexport. Flexport is disrupting the way goods get transferred from China to the US. Can you think of like a more like boring industry of like, hey, we got a box and we're going to put it on a ship and that ship's going to get it from point A to point B? Like we've been doing this thing for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And yet here's a company that's going to come in and disrupt the whole thing by leveraging software and technology to do it better. So at the end of the day, like technology can check a lot of these boxes for venture capitalists. But here's the thing. Pure technology is not the only thing that checks all of these boxes. I mean, there's a lot of other things than technology, like products, business models, that also can check those boxes. So for example, we were an investor in a sunglasses company called Privé Revaux, started by Jamie Foxx, really cool business. Basically, it got started because Jamie Foxx was like, hey, I get these sunglasses from the convenience store. I wear them on the red carpet because I'm tired of going blind from all the flashes from the cameras, and then I toss them out. But then people talk about these sunglasses. So he was like, I'm going to start a business where you could get really affordable but really stylish sunglasses for like $20-30. And that was the genesis of Privé Revaux. Now that doesn't sound super special, but think about the things that matter. So the things that matter are that you have a business that's really scalable. Well, sunglasses are not as scalable as software. That's a given, but they're also not super complex. There are a lot of manufacturers of sunglasses, and you can make sunglasses very cheap, and you can produce a lot of them at scale for not a lot of upfront capital. So even though they're not as scalable as software, they're still a lot more scalable than say, building a car. The other thing is that Jamie has a unique competitive advantage versus other startup sunglasses companies. He's friends with tons of celebrities. And so what he would do is he would give them to all of his friends, and then they would wear them, and they loved them. Like everybody loves these sunglasses because they look good, and if you lose them, you don't feel bad because they only cost $30. Unlike your pair of Prada sunglasses that cost $300 to $1,000, you don't want to lose those. That's a painful loss. But losing a pair of $30 sunglasses isn't the end of the day. And so he had all of these celebrities, J-Lo, A-Rod, Ashton Kutcher. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of people that were wearing these sunglasses. And every time they wore them and the paparazzi showed up, there were millions upon millions of impressions that got pushed out to customers, giving him this huge competitive advantage and the ability to scale his marketing. And so we invested in that, and within a couple of years, it ended up getting picked up by the second largest eyewear brand in the entire world. So sometimes these other businesses make a ton of sense, even though they're not pure technology. That said, I would still argue there's still a technology piece of the business, because part of the way they were able to make it work was that they sold mostly direct to consumer through their online store. And if you think about technology in terms of enabling e-commerce, well, that also has a huge scaling effect as well. I mean, it used to be that you would have to ship out product to hundreds, if not thousands of retail locations, and then hope that they would sell through those different retail locations. And in many cases, if they didn't sell, you know what the retailers would do? They push them back on you and they make you pay them back. So it made it really hard and to scale these businesses, and they ultimately were just not very capital efficient. But using an e-commerce model, you don't have that same problem. And you're actually able to get really insightful data early on that allows you to better manage your supply chain. Ultimately though, VCs love tech because, as I explained earlier, it scales well, it's capital efficient, it can create strong barriers to entry very quickly as it scales. And, as a venture investor, yeah, my fund lasts 10 years, but I've got to go from 0 to $1 billion in that time frame, and that is super, super fast and not a lot of time to do that. And there are very few business models that are capable of doing that, and tech is one of the few that does it the best. So in closing, I just wanted to touch on what this might mean if you're a founder and you're going to go pitch to a venture capitalist. Well, keep in mind all the things that I just talked about that venture capitalists look for. They're looking for companies that scale. They're looking for companies that have defensibility. They're looking for really bright people to run those businesses. They're looking for companies that operate in really big markets. So articulate all those things in your pitch to the venture capitalist. Convince them that your business has the potential to go from 0 to $1 billion in their hold period, which is, call it 5 to 10 years. And if you can do that effectively, if you can convince the VC investor that like yours is one of the ones that matter this year, then you have a much better chance of securing investment from them. If this video was helpful, please check out some of my others, like why are private equity funds structured as limited partners? Thanks.